Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and if you couldn't tell by the title, I am incredibly disappointed in The Ancient Gods, which is the 2 DLC episodes for Doom Eternal. And yeah, they go against everything I like about Doom Eternal's base game. So, what's the worst part of Doom Eternal? There is an actual answer to this, and I have the reason for it. It's the Marauder. So the way that regular Doom Eternal combat works is that you've got a lot of freedom. You have the ability to move around pretty much anywhere you please. You have the ability to pull out any weapon that you like, although the game does, in a reasonable manner, require you to swap weapons from time to time in order to get different ammo, and that's all perfectly fine. But you're free to wander around, you're free to make up new strategies on the fly, and you're free to experiment. So, while I wouldn't recommend taking on an imp with a rocket launcher because it's a waste of ammo, or why I wouldn't recommend taking on a shielded dude with a chain gun because that's not a good way to punch through a particular shield, it feels like you can. If you're in a pinch, or if you just feel like doing it, you can take out a chain gun, a shielder with your chain gun. Or you can take out an imp with a rocket launcher. If you're running low on ammo, if it's just particularly beneficial to you at the time to do it, you can do it. And it gives Doom Eternal a lot of freedom in order to be able to express yourself in this way. Whether it be coming up with wacko strategies on the fly, or pulling out an ineffective weapon against a particular enemy, but you do manage to kill them with what you have, because it's all you've got to hand at the time and you have to improvise. That's my favourite part of Doom Eternal. Being able to go through by the seat of your pants and not have to memorize a bunch of things, not have to use specific strategies on specific enemies, being able to just make shit up on the fly and have it reasonably work. If you get surrounded by 10 enemies, you're gonna fucking die. But if you're surrounded by a few enemies, you can jump out of the way, you can use a rocket right below your feet in order to at least scatter them and make them a little bit less interested in you, and then run away so that you can get more supplies because you desperately need them. That's the best part of Doom Eternal. And then the Marauder comes along and fucks all of that up, because the way the Marauder works is that you need to use a very specific set of weapons and strategies against him. You need to either use the shotgun, the ballista, or the rocket launcher, because nothing else does enough damage. You need to use it at a very specific time, because either you hit him behind with a rocket launcher, or you wait for him to get his green up, and you beat him up there. And you need to keep him at a very specific range, which means your movement options are very limited. Because if you get too far away or too close, he's got different attacks, and he won't be able to do something along the lines of, like, his eyes go green so you can attack him. He won't do that. So you have to stick to a specific movement set, you have to stick to a specific weapon set, you have to stick to a specific strategy set, and that just doesn't work in the context of Doom Eternal for me. And it really frustrates me how that made it through. The Ancient Gods, instead of doubling down on player freedom and giving you even more strategies to work with, doubles down on the monsters that require specific strategies instead. Whether it be the stone imps that say they're resistant to basically everything, but resistant means they take 3 or 4 ballista shots, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous, and the only thing you can hit them with is the goddamn full auto shotgun mod for some reason. Probably because no one used that in the base game and they thought to themselves, oh, we actually need to make this useful. Or all the new Khan style enemies, the ones that you can shoot in the head and they explode in a flurry of, like, weapon ammunition and health. They've got one of those, but they're stronger, they're faster, they have more impressive attacks, but the worst part is that they've got this invulnerable shield on them. Hit them in the head while their shield is down, or you basically do nothing to them. Great, fantastic, thanks for that. There's a new massive enemy, I think he's called, it's like the Tyrant, he's huge, he's got some really powerful melee attacks and AoEs, and you have to take him down by hitting a very specific spot on his thing and then doing some major damage to him, although you can pull out your plasma gun and just hit him with that, but there's no point, just get far enough away from him and you'll be able to hit his weak spot. And then there's the Spirit, which is the absolute worst. So, it inhabits an enemy, and it gets stronger, it gets faster, and it gets more health. So you have to beat the crap out of this already strong enemy that is even stronger, and then the Spirit gets ejected. Now you might think, okay, I'll just shoot the Spirit. you have to hit the spirit with the microwave beam mod of the plasma gun. God, I hate what they did to the plasma gun in Doom Eternal. It wasn't particularly useful in Doom 2016, but at least it wasn't the Doom Eternal one, where the only time you ever pull it out is for very specific uses against very specific enemies, because they're just too weak otherwise. You might as well use ballista shots. It's pathetic, if I'm being honest with you. It's absolutely pathetic. But you have to hold the microwave beam mod on the enemy for 8 seconds. Meanwhile, you've got a bunch of other enemies swarming around you. You can't move fast because you are locked onto this enemy with the microwave beam. You can't move away. You need to be relatively close. And you can't shoot any other enemies because you have the microwave beam locked onto this other enemy. It's fucking dumb. I will say it's fucking dumb. It's almost as bad as the Marauder. Then you face off against the bloody 2 Marauders at the end of part 2, and it's like, okay, fuck that, never mind, the Marauders are still worse. But it's just another set of enemies that require a specific set of ways to take them down. Like, even the Doom Hunter wasn't as bad as half these enemies, because the Doom Hunter, while it did have that shield on, you could still at least hit it with a bunch of rockets from a long distance if you needed to worry about something else in particular. Because it would eventually lose that sled, and then you could get in there and take it out with weapons that are not exactly effective against shields. But every new enemy in this game is something that you have to take out in a specific way. And it drives me nuts, because it just doubles down on having to follow a specific manual, a specific pattern of taking out enemies, instead of having the freedom to do it, and it drives me nuts. And this gets doubled down on by the fact that you start the Ancient Gods Part 1 at the, end of Doom Eternal difficulty level, but you lose the Crucible, which is great. And then they put you, right up in a room with a freaking Cyber Demon and have you take it down in order to justify that extra life you just picked up. Great, thanks, I had a lot of fun with that. And the level design is just not as good. Now, I will admit that the game is still bloody beautiful. The best looking scene in the game is at the end of Ancient Gods Part 2, where everybody's massing up for the attack on Hell. But I gotta tell you, man, the levels themselves are way more cramped. There is so little room to maneuver in half of these arenas, and that's the main reason I would die, because I'd get forced into a corner by some of the bullshit these enemies would pop out. The physics have also gone kind of insane. I don't know what it is, but I do not remember Doom Eternal flinging me around with abandon as much as this game did. I've been sent into freaking walls, I've been sent way up into the sky, I've just been screwed with by the physics so much, and just getting stuck in corners. I have been stuck in more corners in the first level of Ancient Gods than I have in Doom Eternal the entirety of its campaign combined. They're just so cramped, and as a result, you feel like you've got barely any room to move, and that's the main reason why all the people hated the Ancient Gods Part 1. You could take out 3 Archviles, you could take out the shielded Khan enemy dude, and something else put together, if you had the room for it. But this game insists on giving you basically no room to do anything. And a lot of the general just run around and restock all your supplies runs that you have to do are basically just run little circles around what little room you have and hope that one particular turn doesn't result in you having an enemy in front of you, because 2 enemies are guaranteed to be behind you and you will get stuck. The amount of times that this has happened to me is immense. And as a result, you're stuck in these really compact levels with enemies that are a massive pain in the ass to defeat, and it feels unfair. That's legitimately what it starts to feel like, especially when it comes to that final Slayer Gate, or that, just in general, any of the small combat arenas in particular. When they double up on some of the enemies that you have to defeat in specific ways, like, you get a Spirit, one of the new Karnam enemies with the invulnerable shield, and then a bunch of the other ones, like a Doom Hunter, for example, which you generally need to take down. If you've got that much crap around you, you generally need that one to die as fast as humanly possible. It just feels unfair. It just feels like they're throwing shit at the wall in terms of the encounter design, and a lot of it feels like a luck-based mission. Like, there is more than one occasion in this game where I've tried to play through a level, and the only reason I managed to succeed is because they've somehow gotten themselves stuck on the level geometry, and by them I mean like a major enemy that's a pain in the ass to deal with, giving me room to deal with everything else. Otherwise it's just too cramped and too ridiculous to be enjoyable. And then they triple down on it with the bosses. Guess what you have to... That was my phone going off, by the way, I apologize. Guess what you have to deal with in the first boss, in the End of the Ancient Gods Part 1? 2 spirits simultaneously. Holy fuck, I was ready to throw my goddamn keyboard out the window. It was so bad! Trying to deal with 2 spirits at once when they're constantly in this tiny ass arena. You've got this constantly respawning, like a yellow shielded Khan Maker dude, just flying around taking pot shots at you all the time. And these lasers going across the field all the time. And it's just so hard to deal with. I had to put on that bloody Sentinel armor that reduces the amount of damage you take, because it was just bloody ridiculous. But then the final boss of Part 2 is even worse, because you have to do a very specific set of movements in order to actually defeat this guy. If he hits you with any attack whatsoever directly, he gets health back and you lose it. So you have to deal with the fact that he has a very specific set of attacks that you need to be able to avoid, while he can summon spirits to distract you from the attacks that you need to avoid. But the worst part, as I said, is when the game decides to make it so that you have to follow a very specific script in order to make sure certain enemies die. With the final boss, you cannot dash. I say cannot. You can, but it leaves you open to attack, because the final boss has the ability to do a shield charge at you. You have very little warning that it's coming, and the only way that you can realistically avoid it is immediately dashing to the left or right twice. If you only dash once, you will get hit, because he has a follow-up AoE attack that also hits you. If you dash twice, but you're just a millisecond too late on the second dash, you will get hit. You need to be that quick. I have had multiple situations where the bosses hit me because I just couldn't get my pinky finger back down onto my shift key in time in order to successfully pull off the dash. And when he regains health off that attack, it's basically you get to do another cycle with this boss. I've had that boss down to like like a quarter of his health, but then he's hit me once while I was trying to deal with all the fucking spirits he summoned, and he got all his health back. At that point, I just put my hands off the mouse and keyboard and just waited to die, because there was nothing else there was to do. And it's just so frustrating. The fact that they felt the need to have such just an instructions focused. The fact that you have to follow a very specific set of rules. It's starting to feel like shit MMOs, where you're pressing the same 5 keys in a row every single time. And they just have no other way to keep it engaging. You just have to follow the same patterns, otherwise you're going to be less effective. But even then, in this game, it's not even less effective. You're going to get your shit kicked in. Now, I beat this game on Ultraviolence. If you don't count the fact that I had to turn on the Sentinel armor on the final boss of the Ancient Gods Part 1, I did beat this game on Ultraviolence. I know what I'm talking about. I had the same complaints about Doom Eternal, but they were nowhere near as bad. But the cramped level design, the enemies that are just a pain to deal with and not actually fun to fight, and a couple of other things on the side. The number one being that there's very little in the way of unlockables. I do appreciate the 2 waves they added in Part 2, where you've got like the Demon Eye thing from Doom 2016, but you hit it once, you have to do it once in order to successfully get a Sentinel Hammer upgrade. Then you do it again, and you get a second set of enemies, which are a lot more of a pain in the ass, but give you a cosmetic. Those are kind of nice. They're also really hard because they put a bunch of those bullshit enemies next to each other and have you deal with them, but yeah, those are nice. But the levels are also way more linear than they were before. Nowhere near as much exploration, nowhere near as much collectibles. It's all just codex stuff for the most part. And it's honestly kind of annoying. A bit disappointing, really. Very little in the way of secret hunting. And then there's the story, which feels even thinner on the ground than Doom Eternal was. But at the same time, is even more egregiously large. Like, Doom Eternal, Doom 2016 felt small. You just woke up on Mars, beat the crap out of as many demons as possible, you don't know what's going on with the rest of the universe. Doom Eternal, not so much, although I wasn't helped by the fact that you had to read like an entire novel's worth of codexes. And now in the Ancient Gods, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I have no idea who any of these people are anymore. Like, let's just get into some spoilers for the story. You've already heard what I think about the gameplay, and on that alone, I wouldn't recommend the DLC pack because it's just a more frustrating version of Doom Eternal. But let's get on to the story spoilers. The bloody AI is a second god. Samuel Hayden is the Seraphim, whatever that means. And the Dark Lord, who you start out this DLC set of levels to beat, turns out to be actually God, and you've been working for the bad guys this entire time. Because as soon as you defeat God and take out the demons, they all go away, and then the Ancient Gods just trip you up, put you back in your casket, and that's it. It's so anticlimactic that it's actually funny. And it brings, like, almost no closure. Not to mention all the random people who come out of nowhere. Like the guy who gives you the Sentinel Hammer, which is like your new stun everything around you weapon. It's actually kind of useful, but it doesn't make up for the fact that a bunch of these enemies require certain ways to be defeated, and the hammer doesn't really help with that at all. I don't know who the dude is who gives you the Sentinel Hammer. From my point of view, he's just this random guy who turns up and gives you a weapon. Kind of neat, but who the fuck is he? I don't know. I didn't read the novel worth of lore. Why do I have to go to this particular, like, world sphere in order to get to the Dark Lord? Why do I have to wander around on Earth in order to get to the Dark Lord? Why is it that it takes a couple of bloody spaceships from some other planet in order to get me inside the walls, or to get me to, like, the thing that teleports me to the Dark Lord? Why does the Dark Lord leave on a ship, but we go in a teleport beam? That doesn't make any sense to me. Honestly, it feels rushed. Despite the fact that they had, like, 6 levels worth of potential areas to throw in story exposition or what have you. And admittedly, I didn't bother reading the codexes this time around either, because I get the feeling that it'll leave me only more confused. So yeah, I didn't have a bloody clue what was going on in the story of this one. Other than everyone we knew is godlike, and they also turn out to be the bad guys. I got nothing. I just can't help but be disappointed. Which is a real shame, because if it weren't for the new enemies, if it weren't for the tighter level design, and by tighter I mean more enclosed, more cramped, more claustrophobic, if it wasn't for that, it'd be more Doom Eternal, which would be fucking great. But they had to go and fuck it up. They've even put more emphasis on the fucking Marauder. You're seeing more in these 2 DLC packs than you do in the entirety of Doom Eternal. But they still don't put any extra enemies with him because they know how much it fucks them up. The one time that you see him with an enemy that's more dangerous than a bloody Revenant is when a bloody Cyber Demon spawns in, but the arena is so big that you can just run around in a circle, take care of the Cyber Demon, and then it's just a Marauder fight again, so it just ends up being irrelevant. Frankly, I'm not sure they knew what they were doing. I thought the Marauder was more of just a, just like a bad slip-up in an otherwise excellent game, but considering the direction they took with the DLCs, no, this is what they intended all along, and frankly, it's shit. I would not recommend Doom Eternal, The Ancient Gods, because I just find them to be more frustrating than fun. Whether it be because they walked backwards on the enemy design, the level design, or the story. God, the funniest thing about the story, too, is just that one of my big complaints about Doom Eternal was that you didn't know what the fuck happened between 2016 and Eternal. And then this starts up literally with a fucking text crawl saying, hey, you beat the Icon of Sin, and now you get to go and take out the dude who was doing this all in the first place. But it basically just turns out to be a certain amount of fetch quests. So fucking bizarre, man. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.